Okay, hello and welcome to a special episode of my narrated videos. Actually, it's not a narrated video, there's a little bit of that at the end, but I really want to talk about the K-Guard, which has been increasing in popularity recently, and there are quite a few instructionals out there now. Not that many, but there are a few. So I thought if you're new to the K-Guard, which I was about 6 months ago, fairly new at least, you may be curious to see what it's all about, see if you want to try. I think it's brilliant. I love it, and I love it so much that I thought I'd spend a bit of time really studying it, using it in training, and seeing what it's all about. So there's quite a few reviews. There's a couple of instructionals out there. A quick little history of the K-Guard itself. I think it's fair to say that it was Lachlan Giles who popularized what the K-Guard can do at the ADCC in 2019. So I'll just drag up a video here and you'll see that he is here. This is thanks to Flow Grappling. I'll only show a little bit, hope they don't sue me. But you can see that here's Lachlan Giles, and he's already setting up the K-Guard by, and you'll notice there, so he hooks underneath the leg. So we'll just pause it there. Basically what's happening here, he's dropping down with his left arm and hooking underneath his opponent's right thigh, hamstring there. So that's a key criteria to one part of the K-Guard. The other part is you can't quite see it, but his left knee will be dropping down as well and pointing towards the ground and trying to get really underneath the opponent. And then the other leg, which is kind of like a free attacking leg, will be swinging around, and he's searching for all sorts of things there. In this case, he's looking for a heel hook. There we go. So I just want to show a little bit there. I don't want to show the whole video. If you want to just go onto YouTube, check it out yourself. Very easy to search for K-Guard material. But if you want to get in depth, the best way to study the K-Guard is to look at some instructionals. So I thought I'd pick out 4 that are well worth your time looking at. And each one is very interesting. The K-Guard, each K-Guard instructional instructor pretty much emphasizes slightly different things. The fundamentals of the K-Guard position are more or less the same, but each instructor will have his or own take on the position and what you can do from there. So I thought that was very interesting. And I guess really the takeaway from that is that you're going to have to study as much as you can of the K-Guard and then take what you want from there and make it your own, which is what I've done. Let's look at the first one. Okay, so the first instructional that I thought would be, I'd like to talk about, is the one by Josh Cisneros. Now, I don't know anything about Josh, but I can see from videos online of his competition fights and his instructional that he's a young lad, clearly very talented, very successful, and I think he's quite small as well. I don't know his weight, but he doesn't look like a big guy, which immediately I'm drawn to because I'm not a big guy myself, so I like small people techniques. Although that being said, I think one of the benefits to the K-Guard is that anyone of any size and ability can use it. It really doesn't rely on much flexibility. And Josh's video on Jiu-Jitsu X, the Jiu-Jitsu X website, is a very good introduction to the K-Guard for the gi. And I'll talk more about the difference between gi and no gi a little bit later. But Josh's videos, let's bring up his K-Guard website here. Okay, so I'm just bringing up, Josh is instructional on the jiujitsux.com website. That's the instructional website that is at least Keenan Cornelius seems to be the figurehead for, although I'm sure other people own it as well. But I like the Jiu-Jitsu X website videos because they're all filmed in a very clean, studio-lit condition. All the instructors wear lapel mics, pretty much like I'm doing, so the audio is very good. And none of the videos, or at least most of them, don't seem to be like huge 4-hour epic instructionals. They're all pretty much easy to learn, bite-sized chunks. And you know, I think the price you pay for it is reasonable. So I'm looking at the K-Guard Culture, which is Josh's K-Guard instructional, and you can see the free lessons here. Now, what's interesting with Josh's take on the K-guard is that it's all the gi. I'm sure he can do it no gi, but it's all in the gi. And there isn't a huge amount of content, which is fine, which I like. And if you see, so we're looking at I'm just looking at the title here. You've got a couple of entries, mainly from closed guard, but also what to do when they stand up in closed guard, and also from De La Riva. That's pretty much it. Nothing wrong with that. These are very, very common, easy to get positions for that beginners find themselves in when playing guard. Josh then goes on to talk about the key details of the K-guard. I think one of the key defining features of Josh's K-guard is that he likes to grab the opposite lapel sleeve, as you can see he's doing there. And from there, he likes to pass it to the hand that is underhooking the leg of his opponent. From there, you get pretty much good control over your opponent's posture and his ability to break away from your so-called K-guard. That's the key component of Josh's techniques. He likes to use his free leg as a mechanism to assist with that pass over. See, sorry, I've skipped too far. Yeah, so he uses his free leg to swing over and grab the far sleeve. Now with this connection, you can then grab the lapel and work a whole number of sweeps and attacks. So I just wanted to show what the basis of all pretty much all the techniques that he shows from there. We'll go back to the homepage and I want to show you the chapters. I'm not going to show you all the techniques. You're going to have to buy the video if you want to see it. But essentially what you can do, once you establish that opposite sleeve grip on the underhook arm, is that you can then work a whole series of sweeps. So he shows a couple of sweeps here. There's some attacks, omoplata, triangle, armbar, kimura, and back takes, of course. So the back take from that K-guard position, a lot of people know as the matrix, and that's probably the more useful component of what you can do from the K-guard. Although that being said, if we look at the other instructions, when I talk about the other instructions, you'll find that there's a whole ton more you can do from the K-guard, as well as just back takes, which I'll discuss a bit later. And then Josh goes on to show a few more sweeps from there. I'll show you some of the free ones. This is a back take from the K-guard. This is one of the free content, so I won't get into trouble with showing this. So really, with the K-guard, you'll notice that Josh, let's have a look. Josh goes for that far sleeve grip, lapel grip, and then it's a matter of swinging your hips and your leg over to reach the far side. Now Josh shows a couple of variations of what he likes to do from there and how to take the back, and it's probably the most detailed portion of his website, of his technique there. But from there you can see he's reaching around, and it's a matter of grabbing. Now it's handy in the gi that you do have the gi skirt or the belt or the hemline that you can grip and inch your way around to the back. And because of the sort of spiraling nature of his body position, it is possible to get some form of back control, or at least a crab ride, which you would then progress onto the back. We'll just speed it along so you can see what he does there. So yeah, and then it's a matter of how the opponent reacts, really. If they just sort of stand there not doing anything, you can just flick your legs away for that good old-fashioned crab ride to the back take. So that's just a small example of what you can do. I really like Josh's. Let's get my face back up so it looks like I'm doing a bit of editorial. Yeah, okay. So I really like Josh's set. I think it's a really, really good introduction. All the techniques are very easy to do for complete beginners or geriatric old black belts like me who may not have come across the K-guard before. What I find is with that opposite sleeve grip underhook position and the lapel grab is that you get an extraordinary amount of posture breaking and control over your opponent. It's like they're kind of stuck, very similar to lasso guard in that respect, in that your opponent is very much tied up and they're not quite sure what to do from there. I mean, there are guard passes from there, but let's have a look at something else while I'm chit-chatting away you might as well see some more footage of Josh discussing. This is X-guard triangle from the K-guard. Okay, I haven't tried this one before, but I've tried a couple of his techniques in sparring. As I say, very easy to use. I think they're more useful. The K-guard that he shows is more useful when the opponent stands up. So when they're kneeling, I find it's not as effective to enter into K-guard, because when they're kneeling, it's very hard to get that underhook, and they're much more stable. Their base is much more stable, so it's quite hard to dislodge them. But when they're standing up, you can kind of shoot in. As long as you have some sort of grip on the sleeve, you can shoot in for the underhook, pass the sleeve over, and you've got that really secure grip. So I really like that idea. But apart from that, it is really just a good introduction. I think if you want to get into a lot more detail over what you can do with the K-guard in the gi, then the next instructional, I think, will be suitable for you if you really want to go in depth. And that's the one by Mikey Musumeci. So I'll talk about that in the next segment. Okay, let's have a look at the second of our K-guard tutorials, and I'm looking at Mikey Musumeci's K-guard and the Matrix System Instructional, subtitled Attacking the Legs from the Knees, Part 1. And although it says Volume 1 on the thing there, that's just a screen grab. This is on BJJ Fanatics, so let's have a look at the BJJ Fanatics website. Now, BJJ Fanatics. Man, what a huge site the BJJ Fanatics has grown to be. So it's no surprise that you'll get the K-guard, quite a few K-guard instructionals on there. I'm reviewing Mikey's work because, for a start, it's absolutely huge. I just counted up the number of hours on it, and it's 5 hours of K-guard instruction. I mean, we're talking a seriously deep dive into the K-guard as taught by Mikey. And it covers, as you can see, 8 chapters. Okay, and each chapter has God knows how many, let's call them discs. So 8 discs, although I don't know anyone who buys DVDs anymore. And each disc has quite a few chapters. Now, the thing with Mikey's work is that he goes into a lot of detail with concepts. Before he teaches specific techniques, he likes to build up the conceptual framework to why he uses a technique and how he uses it. So let's look at disc 1. I'll run through them very quickly. Disc 1, he's looking at all sorts of concepts, but I think the first one is a very good one. And it's about how you can attack the upper body, which frees the lower body of your opponent to attack, or you attack the lower parts of the body, their legs, and it leaves their upper body free for you to also attack. So he uses that as a basis to use his K-guard, but also many of his other guard systems. He uses the collar and sleeve analogy a lot. So he talks about his collar and sleeve set, which I haven't got. I must have a look at some point. And the idea is, if you want to get the legs part of the opponent, it's not usually good to go straight in there with the legs, especially if they're aware of what you're doing. His idea is to talk about threatening the upper body of your opponent, which leaves the lower half vulnerable or slightly unbalanced, which allows you to then follow up with the K-guard part. So all these opening chapters talk about the concepts that he uses to unbalance his opponent. In this case, his sister Tammy is his training partner here. By the way, look out for her expressions and the way they interact. They're so sweet. I think they're, brother and sister. They're just like they obviously get on really well. They're obviously over the years of training jiu-jitsu, obviously being siblings, they just seem to get on really well. Anyway, that's just a side point there. Now, the thing with Mikey's set there, it's it's 8 discs, lots of chapters, 5 hours of work. If I could sum it up very quickly, it's all in the gi, and it's basically one thing. He shows you how to get the K-guard and take the back. That's all it is. How to get the K-guard, take the back from the closed guard, and everything that he talks about is about how to do that. There's no submissions. There's sort of sweeps, but he doesn't teach you sweeps. He teaches you. There's no foot locks. There's no 50, backside 50-50. There's no triangles. There's no arm bars. There's no knee bars. It's all about taking the back. But man, is this DVD so full of concepts that you can use across all sorts of guards, especially collar and sleeve and De La Riva, any of the open guard systems. Everything that he teaches in this set is such good value that you can apply across the board. I'll pick out a few highlight chapters, I think. Let's have a look. I'm just looking at my notes on the side here. Yeah, I think disc 1 is really, really good as a universal introduction to how to play open guard and how to unbalance your opponent. The way he breaks down the whole 8 disc system is that the first set is really about how to get that first underhook on the arm. Let's have a look. So chapter 2, it's a lot about how to, so a lot of chapter 2, disc 2 is based around how to set up that first initial arm underneath. And this is where I think we didn't get enough information from Josh Cisneros' set. With Josh, it was very much here's a technique, here's how I do it, here's a repeat of the technique, okay, on to the next one. Very good as a primer, fantastic introduction. Sometimes you don't need 8 hours of content to do a technique. You can just watch and do it, which is Josh is perfect for that. But when you come across certain problems, like I found that when I was trying to get that first underhook, especially on a kneeling opponent, it was very, very hard to do because they would either sit back or they would posture their body to deny me that underhook. Mikey breaks all that down. I mean, he goes into so much detail. It's almost too much information. I'm going to have to spend months and months viewing this, and I have spent months and months viewing this, and I still find it somewhat hard to incorporate. Relatively, it's getting relatively easier. Anyway, put it like that, thanks to his concepts. He's just showing some concepts. I'm just trying to find you a good example where it's all about the concepts of when the body raises up, the posture, the balance forward, the balance backwards, the balance sideways, the weight on one leg, weight on another, and Mikey breaks it down, and he's very, very scientific. That would be my summation. But you can see he's already sort of using his legs, his knees, his posture, the way he can manipulate the upper body and lower body to try and get that first initial hook in. Let's have a look at something else. 3 types of feet, live foot. Okay, so disc 3. Disc 3 again covers more about how the opponent sort of sits there and tries to not give you what you want in terms of a nice, clean attack. Now, the interesting thing with Mikey's stuff is that his aim, because he wants to take the back, his aim, as you can see in this example here, with the K-guard and the underhook, is to lift his opponent's leg up, ideally onto his chest. And in order to do that, you have to make that leg light, so he will come up with a whole bunch of ways to show you how to do that, which is, not an uncommon concept in the K-guard, that making that leg light, but actually lifting it up really high and into several positions, one of which he calls 70-30, and the other one is 50-50. You can get to all sorts of positions, but he doesn't really show those secondary guard systems. He really just wants to show the concept of how to get the underhook and how to raise the leg up onto the chest. So that's disc 3. Disc 4, more setups. This is the interesting bit. This is the meat I think, of his system, for me anyway, because I complained about from close guard and on a kneeling opponent it was very hard to get the underhook. Well, chapter 4 or disc 4 really goes into the meat. There, as you can see there, he shows you a variety of setups. Let me see if I can expand this a bit bigger. It's a bit too big, isn't it? Sorry. Let's have a look at what he does here. So he talks. He does a lot of talking. Yeah, so it's a lot about wedges, underhooks, unbalancing, replacing one part of your body with another part of your body as you work your way around. There you go. So he's going in there. So collar grips also very useful. Again, this is all gi. Everything is the gi. I guess it would need a little bit of a different kind of take if it was for no gi in terms of the collar grip aspects. But I'm sure that will all be covered in Neil's set and Lachlan's set, which I'll talk about later. But as you can see, there you go. So you can see what I mean. He's trying to lift that leg up, which allows him to do the back take, right? And there are variations of the back take, which he spends 3 chapters talking about. One thing I wanted to highlight, which I thought was very interesting, just trying to find, I made a note about it. Yeah, let's move on to chapter 5, because there's a specific thing that I noticed, which isn't covered necessarily by the other K-Guard instructors, apart from one, and that's this one, deadlift arm sweep, which I found very interesting, and I've been using to great effect. So this one is a very useful thing. Let's just play it out. Okay, so I've just brought up to get a bigger screen version of my download of it, legitimately downloaded from BJJ Fanatics, and I want to show you the thing that Mikey uses in order to counteract the opponent posturing up, which is, I find, for me personally, I find very common. So when they posture up, although it's very easy to get an underhook, it's not quite so easy to get anything else out of it. So what he then does is, he's going to explain it in a minute. By the way, sometimes the focus goes in and out, and the cameraman wobbles. The thing with a lot of BJJ Fanatics videos is they're shot very cheaply. There's no lapel mic. I mean, this one isn't too bad. Mikey's stuff isn't too bad, but it sounds very echoey. The sound isn't as good as the Jiu-Jitsu X stuff, but a minor quibble. I mean, I paid peanuts for it, basically. So anyway, going back to what Mikey's doing there, he's just explaining with the gable grip. It's very hard to drag the person over when they posture, but he then raises his hips up high, he uses his knee shield high, right across the shoulder line, and he's right on the pinpoint of his shoulder here. Now this, I didn't see taught by Josh's stuff, but Mikey here is demonstrating what happens if they posture, and he's using that. And it's just one of many of his conceptual parts that he shows. But this posture here right now, what you can see here, forms the basis of pretty much everything that is shown by the next DVD I'm going to show, which is the one by Neil Melanson. He is very firm on the idea of getting your hips raised up high and the shin up high, and everything is very much using your lower body high up against your opponent when they're seated. And I personally have found that very useful. That sort of very upward movement really creates quite a significant force against a kneeling opponent, and that particularly small point, a chapter hidden away in Mikey's DVD here, is really well worth your time practicing, but he just uses it as a whole, just one part of many other things that he talks about. Right, so the other chapters really are all to do with back takes, and specifically the matrix, although he does talk about the berimbolo, and he talks about how he enjoys the berimboloing. And, you know, I'm confession here, I'm not a big fan of these kind of back takes. I just, you know, I'm old, I'm not very flexible anymore. I mean, I can do them, but you know, sparring against someone who's really, really good, it's not something I would necessarily go for. So this is where my interest in Mikey's DVD kind of waned a little bit. For me, the K card has more interest as a mechanism to get to the legs for leg locking, or for upper body attacks like the triangle and the armbar, which is covered by Josh's set, and later on I'll show you Neil's set, and of course Lachlan's set as well. But for Mikey, he has one specific aim, and that's to get to the back. And if that is something that you like to do or you see as a valuable exercise, Mikey's set is well worth the investment in your time and money. So for example, here he's showing you the concepts of his matrix system, and it's all about getting that leg, your free leg, over to the other side. I'll show you a little bit. Let's have a look what he's trying to do. He's just showing you a concept here. By the way, I'm using my downloaded video here because my internet's gone down, so I can't show you the as seen by the BJJ Fanatics website. So you can see he's created an angle. He's taken the grip of the hemline of the his sister's trousers there, and now he's got the free leg, which he can then use to assist with the back take. It's not a done deal. Once you're there, you still have to do the crab ride and get to the back. He's showing you a very, very basic example. But as I say, there's 3 of the 8 discs. There are 3 discs dedicated to the back take. So it's a significantly huge portion of the whole instructional. It's obviously a whole part of Mikey's game. And with the gi, you can grab onto like the gi skirt and the hemline and that sort of thing. That's why back takes are very the matrix and the beriberi, they're very much a part of the accessible part of the system, so to speak. Arguably in no gi, there's without that hemline grip, there's one less grip option. But I know lots of people who can take the back no gi as well using the K guard. So it's just me quibbling really. It's just something to be aware of when you buy Mikey's set. Again, he continues with the whole conceptual theme, but in the latter half of this disc, he is showing a lot more technique as well, or how it's applied in reality. Let's just move it forward a bit because I want to show him variations of him taking it back. Yeah, he goes into a lot more detail about what you do with your leg and what happens if they move and shift their weight this way and that way. The grip remains the same with the hemline. I mean, I have tried this, and you know, it's successful. It's just, as I say, my particular mindset isn't so geared towards taking the back, and I'm sure, you know, many people will criticise that because the back is the best position to go for, gi or no gi. So why ignore 50% of your body, right? That's my fault. That's for me to deal with. You don't worry about it. You go for the back. Just trying to show you a clean technique where, yeah, Mikey's going for the back there. There we go. So a lot of concepts, as I say, there's 3 whole chapters dealing with that. I think it's a great set. I think if you want to do a deep dive into not just K-guard, but how Mikey teaches the open guard and all the conceptual building blocks that are applied to weight distribution, unbalancing your opponent, seeking certain grips and underhooks, using your body to replace another, all these aspects, he goes into a lot of details and he repeats them again and again and again throughout all the discs. So you never really forget. I guess arguably it's almost too much information to take in 1 or 2 or 3 sittings. You have to sit there, and it's probably a lifetime's worth of work of just referring back to again and again, depending on your own experience levels. I think if you're a white belt, you know, good luck going through all that. It's a lot of work, but you know, that's what we're here for. We're here to learn. Again, the hips raised aspect, going for the back take as well. This seems to be a common feature for his work there. Anyway, that's Mikey's set. I think it's really good. There's look at that, all these chapters there, So it's a lot of content. Anyway, moving on to no-gi now. We're going to look at Neil Melanson's set, the Special K. I like this set a lot. I've taken examples of his tutorial, his instruction, and used it in my sparring as well. Gi or no gi, doesn't matter. So you got that to look forward to. Right, let's look at the next tutorial, and that is the special K-guard by one Neil Melanson. Now the thing with Neil is that he is an MMA instructor. Okay, so everything he teaches is with the possibility that strikes are a possibility in the interchange. So either you're the one doing the K-guard and striking, or you're having someone strike to you. But that being said, I think the fundamentals that he brings along to his instruction is absolutely brilliant, and I've been using a lot of the concepts and the body mechanics that he teaches as part of my learning to use the K-guard. So he brings a lot of detail and a little bit of a different spin on things. So we'll move on and show you a couple of his techniques and how he teaches, which are a little bit different from the other K-guard instructionals that you'll see. Now, the first thing you'll notice if we go into the BJJ Fanatics website is that Neil is he's quite a character. He's quite funny and very entertaining and very captivating. He's a very good coach in that respect, an online coach as well as, I presume, in person. I mean, I don't know much about Neil, but he clearly knows his stuff. He very much comes from an MMA background, and his techniques work gi, no gi, MMA, whatever. So what you'll notice difference with his K-guard is that he is very keen to emphasize the elevation of the hips above the ground. He's very, very clear about that. If you're playing K-guard with your hips resting on the ground, it's not K-guard. That's the one feature that I noticed with his version of the K-guard. Another thing is that, irrespective of the hook here, the leg here clamps around the body. He's very loath to drop that knee down to the ground, which is unlike what you'll see with Mikey's instructional, or Josh's, or later on Lachlan's. His argument is that once you do the inverted K and drop the knee to the ground, you're committed to going for that leg lock here, which in itself is not a bad thing. But Neil's game is all about having the option of both upper body and lower body attacks. So actually a lot of the instruction on this K-guard tape is focused on triangles, arm bars, kimuras, so basically upper body attacks, and he focuses only a small amount of tension on the leg locks. Another key feature of his K-guard is with the elevated hip is that he uses the top knee quite freely. So in most cases he'll use it as a sort of knee shield, very high up on the chest. But he can also use it as a pendulum to swing around and create some sort of pendulum sweep type action. He can also use it as a bait. So whilst he's creating a frame, he wants the opponent to create pressure back, and then he'll drop the frame so the opponent will fall into the hole, so to speak, which sets the opponent up for triangle attacks and arm bars and other upper body attacks. So he's very, very keen to emphasize this. The principle that Neil emphasizes is the low to high principle. So he'll start looking like he's clamping onto the leg, looking like he's going for leg locks, but actually what he's doing is baiting the upper body for attacks there. So we'll look at this technique here. I'll bring the sound down. So he's talking about the grips there. He pretty much changes his grips. He uses that underhooking hand for a variety of purposes, and not just for the underhook, but he'll grab the arm of your opponent, but he'll also wrap his hand over the leg of the hooking leg of his opponent to create what he calls an ankle pick. So he pulls it on, and so that's been useful as well. All these techniques that he shows are very, very simple, very straightforward, very logical. He has a very, very logical approach. Although Neil, confesses himself he's not a gi player, he has studied how gi players use, for example, spider guard and collar and sleeve guard, because they're quite inverted in that respect, in the same position, and they focus on upper body attacks. Anyway, as you can see here, he's gripping the arm, and you can see how his sweeps work with his K guard, and that's one of the things I found very, very useful from from Neil's instruction is that my ability to unbalance the opponent uh, is, uh, is much better thanks to watching his techniques. Another thing that I've noticed with Neil is that all his techniques rely on, nearly all his techniques rely on the opponent in the kneeling position, in a high kneeling position. He doesn't really explain this in depth, but I presume it's because in MMA, when someone's ground and pounding you, they're more likely to be in the kneeling, high kneeling posture where their hips elevated and they're raining down blows, so they can get a gravity, but they're not standing up. And I presume that's the reason why all his techniques are set up from that. You can see the opponent there kneeling up high, which gives access to the underhook and allows you to grip the wrists and the head to bait for the various upper body attacks. So anyway, this video I just wanted to show the posture that he uses is a very high elevated hip, the clamping of the knee and the uses of the knee and of the knee shield. We'll look at another video. We'll pause this one. Now in this technique, he's really big on his triangles, this Neil. He does love a good triangle attack. And this one he calls the pinch senkaku, which I tried to do. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I couldn't quite get the execution right, that finish. But he says he catches it all the time. You can see how inverted, not inverted, but how the hooking arm allows his hips to pivot out. And then he connects the instep of his right foot underneath for the figure 4, and he gets that pinching effect. That's why he calls it the pinch senkaku. It does rely on the opponent having fallen into the hole and their posture really broken a lot. It's an interesting take on the triangle. As I say, I've tried to do it in the sparring. It's a little bit difficult to achieve. But I'm sure with practice I could do it. But he does show other variations of the triangle. He's not a big fan of the front triangle, you know, the traditional one, because you have to kind of spin out of that position that he's in right there, which gives a space to the opponent to possibly escape. So again, have a look at his hips are still very elevated off the ground. He doesn't eschew this sort of what he calls lazy K-guard. So basically, I just wanted to show how he does the triangle there. He does a lot of explanation. Yeah, you saw an example of that. He's using the frames of the knees, and then he's sinking his knees to allow, which causes the opponent to fall down into the hole, which is a trap. So he uses the K-guard as a trapping system. As you can see, I'll just move along so you can see the menu. So there's a lot of upper body attacks. So you've got triangle armbar, armbar triangle, triangle armbar, mounted triangle, and using his hand as a collar tie. On chapter 3, on disc 3, he covers back takes, and it's interesting. I won't show the whole thing, but his back takes are a little bit unorthodox. In my opinion, we're used to the sort of the crab ridey matrix style of back takes, and Mr. Melanson doesn't really seem to go for that particular style. His background is wrestling, so he'll go for more of a wrestling back take. We'll see the back take here. I'm not trying to find a bit where he. Yeah, so you can see he's using the K guard here to unbalance the opponent or upset their posture, and then he sits up. So he won't sink both hooks behind for like a crab ride type position or go for a matrix. He just wants to go for like a grab the hip, pretty much like attacking the turtle. So he'll come up and take he has a few nice tips there. I haven't tried any of this stuff. I'm sure it's fairly straightforward. So that's the back take stuff. As you can see, he's going to progress to taking the back. He has some interesting concepts about how to disrupt the mechanics of his opponent. It looks like he's like a police officer arresting someone. If you see that position that he's in, as I say, in terms of my jiu-jitsu training, it looks a bit unorthodox. But I guess to a wrestler or someone who does MMA, this is perfectly natural way of. So I'm not sure what he's doing there. Oh yeah, some mean, dirty stuff. He calls this jiu-jitsu filthy jiu-jitsu, and you can see why. There's snippets of the sort of more mean aspects of grappling in his game, and he obviously, as you can see, he's laughing there. He obviously enjoys that kind of thing. So that's the back take section. It's not that detailed or complicated. It is very much a wrestling-based type of thing. The thing with Neil is that he is very aware of the other. He's clearly aware of the other K-Guard instructionals out there and the people that do K-Guard. All he's doing is offering his own personal spin on this. A little history on the K-Guard from his perspective. He's not saying he invented it, but I think Neil pretty much says that he first came up with this concept, having watched a very well-known vintage MMA athlete called Caro Parisian, who used to use, I guess, a version of the K-Guard, although he didn't call it that. He just used to, go for the underhook and start working on balancing and attacks from there. So Neil would study this, and then, according to him, he systemized a more systemic approach to it. And he called it the K. Well, he calls it K control. The K standing for the K in Caro Parisian, as opposed to the shape of the body, because when I've done it, it doesn't look like a K, and when I've seen other people, I mean, it looks like a funny K. So it's not K because of the shape, it's K because of Caro Parisian. Let's type his name in Google. So Caro Parisian. There you go, that's Caro. MMA competitor. So that's Caro. Another thing, just as a short interlude, I'm really interested, since Neil is an MMA instructor, I was interested to see how common K-Guard or variations of K-Guard is in MMA. Unfortunately, I stopped watching UFC a couple of years ago because my subscription ran out and I couldn't be bothered to renew it, but that's an aside. But Google is there, my friend Google, and Reddit shows that there is an example of K-Guard in MMA. So if you type it into Google, you see there's a Reddit post about it. And there, the chap in the bottom, he goes for the underhook here. And because of the angle of his body, he's able to really get underneath the center of gravity of his opponent with the leg coming over, and he comes up on top. And then he's in side control. So as you can see, it is effective in MMA. And then he begins to finish off his opponent with strikes, which is probably counterintuitive because you would think that by underhooking, you're committing so much to the underhook that you're leaving your head vulnerable to punches. But if you watch Neil's instruction, he says actually if you can grab that near side hand with the grip that he's got here, all the opponent has is the far side punch, and that's not as effective. One more thing I wanted to show you is, where are we now? Is Neil's take on the leg lock system, and we'll show you the little bit here where he's going for inverted heel hook. So Neil talks about the fact that he doesn't like to commit his far leg and swing it over, just like you saw in the MMA clip. He uses this sort of clamping system where he still uses that sort of knee as a shield here, and he goes for a figure four grip on the hooking leg. And when you use that figure four grip, you're able to lever it towards you and sweep the opponent. And when you sweep the opponent, you then are able to sit up and go for the inverted heel hook, which he says it's so easy to do. He catches it so often that he doesn't even do it anymore because it's just too easy, like taking candy from a baby. I've sort of tried this, and it sort of works. I haven't really drilled it or used it at speed, but to know that it's there, it's really, really nice. And he certainly makes it look super easy to do. So if your heel hooks are in your training repertoire, then that's a really good one to go for. He also does show a knee bar, but again, he doesn't really he only does the knee bar if the person stands up, and it's the only case in this entire 3.5 hour in tutorial that he talks about an opponent standing up. And it's very, again, it's all very simple. When the opponent stands up, he'll just clamp onto the lower part of the leg and make the person sweep backwards. And what's interesting, he does acknowledge that Lachlan Giles talks about Lachlan Giles' preferred method of taking the leg all the way round behind for the backside 50-50. But even there, he doesn't really finish a knee bar. He immediately adapts it into the inside heel hook. So not a lot of... I mean, there's really only 2 leg lock positions, and he just says, if you want more leg locks, go watch Lachlan Giles' DVD. I think that's very, very honest of Neil. There's certainly... I think if you were to pair up this tutorial with Lachlan's set or Mikey's or Josh's, you would have a really good all-round view of what the K-guard can do. Neil's is very much based on upper body attacks and using your K as a frame and as a trapping system and as a pendulum system to really create, to cause an unbalance in your opponent. I think the tips there and the techniques that he shows are brilliant, are really useful. They've really helped me understand how to use at least K-guard as an actual guard, both as a defense and as an attack. And it's super easy to do from close guard. I just, open the guard up, get for an underhook. He doesn't really talk about when the opponent is sitting back on their heels, which Mikey does in much more detail, in insane amounts of detail. Neil is already assuming that the person has postured upright on the kneeling position there. So perhaps if I were to quibble, I would have liked a little bit more explanation of how you get that first underhooking arm, because if they're sitting back on their heels, it's not really easy to get that underhook, which is what I found sparring with my training partners. But that being said, there's so much good stuff in this. If you're starting out learning K-guard, I'd say this one or Josh's is probably your good first go-to, easy to learn how to use K-guard. And you could just watch it once and then you could start using it literally the next session. Pick up 3 or 4 of his tips and use it next, because that's what I did and I thought it was really, really useful. So definitely not one to miss. I think he's got some great advice in this one. And that's Neil's Special K guard on BJJ Fanatics. Go check it out. The next and final tutorial that we're going to look at is the mighty encyclopedia of the K-guard by the epic Lachlan Giles. We'll have a look at that. I'll spend a bit of time analysing what the content on there and how useful it's been and how useful it is for your average Joe grappler like myself and like you. So that's coming up next. Okay, the next K-guard tutorial we're going to look at, and the final one, is the epic K-guard, no-gi open guard set from the mighty Lachlan Giles. Now, I love Lachlan. He's produced an absolutely massive tutorial here. It runs to 8 discs, virtual discs, with a total of 6 hours and 17 minutes. Now, that's huge by anyone's standards, but for Lachlan that's just normal. All the sets he puts out on BJJ Fanatics are always super loaded with information, very useful information as well, road battle tested by Lachlan himself, which you can see whenever you watch his competitions footage. But more importantly, Lachlan has a very systematic approach to the way he pumps out material. It's very much like a lecturer or an instructor that takes a very, almost like an educational approach to formalizing and systemizing the approach to his techniques that he wants you to do. So before we move on to looking at the K-guard in detail, I want to point you out to this. This is some incredible footage of Lachlan in action. I presume after he's taught a seminar at 10th Planet in Austin, and he just rolls with student after student after student, and in every single one he almost replicates the same thing each time. He'll use his open guard techniques, his open guard system, and work for heel hooks. And the open guards and the open guard techniques that he espouses include the K guard, but not solely. He'll link from K guard to De La Riva to reverse De La Riva, and also to 50-50, and his little favourite thing, which he calls the outside Senkaku, which is basically 50-50, but you have the legs sort of kicked over to the other side of your opponent's body. I mean, it's quite incredible footage. It just goes to show you the difference between an elite competitor like Lachlan and very, very good grapplers as per the guys in 10th Planet. So it's a really good showcase for his specific leg lock system. And again, before we move on to the 50-50 guard, it's worth noting that, in my opinion, you need to really be invested with Lachlan's other titles. And in fact, they sell the Nogi bundle, which includes K-Guard, De La Riva Waiter, and Reverse De La Riva, and other discussions on the leg entanglements. And on top of that, you should really also get his leg lock anthology, the 50-50 guard, because that is very much connected with the K-Guard stuff. So what you'll find in each of his sets, he'll discuss. There's quite a lot of overlap on the things that he discussed, but if you want more detail on specifically, for example, in this set, the 50-50, then you have to get that one. But he also talks about K-Guard in there, Reverse De La Riva and De La Riva and Waiter in this set. And then if you switch over to, for example, his other sets like the Reverse De La Riva and De La Riva set, he'll cover K-Guard and 50-50 there. And so you can see the whole ecosystem that Lachlan's built and developed is very much something that you have to invest yourself in wholly. Although that being said, if you only get one of them, then I'm sure there's more than enough information for you to go on for quite a few months, if not years, before you invest in the other stuff. It's just for the purposes of me, because I'm completely curious about these things. I bought all of them, and I can see there's quite a lot of overlap in what but I can see what he's done. He's tried to create a bigger picture for you in terms of your leg entanglement, open guard, leg lock game. All right, so let's move on to the K guard itself. Now, as discussed before, there are 8 discs, and each disc is around about 45 to 50 minutes. So the total is about 6 hours worth of stuff, which is a lot of content. Disc 1 is, like he does in a lot of his sets, is very much an overall view. He'll cover all the things that he's going to teach in very brief segments. He discusses, quite importantly, the why. Why do you use that certain guard in addition to the how? And the why is important. You have to ask yourself this when you use certain techniques. Why do I use these techniques? And what scenarios are they more useful to? And what scenarios would they be advised to use other things? And his argument is that you have to group open guard into 2 sort of main categories. There's the guards where your legs are in between your opponents, for example, like butterfly guard, or reverse De La Riva, and there are guards where your legs are on the outside of your opponent, and that would be, for example, like the K guard, and also the De La Riva guard, and he includes the open guard, the closed guard in that segment. And his argument is that if you're going to use any one of those guards, you should really be very good at transitioning from one guard to the other, and it's much better if you use the guards within that subset of the open leg guards or the inside guards. So if you're going to use butterfly, you should transition to shin to shin or inside reverse De La Riva, as opposed to just switching from butterfly to let's go to K guard. That it's not a very, what he calls a congruent way to play your open guard game. So pretty much the whole of disc 1 is a sort of an argument for the pros and cons of what open guards to use, how to use them, or why you use them. Very, very important chatter, especially if you're fairly new to playing this sort of game. And as I say new, I mean, even as black belts, there are lots of things you can learn from the opening segments for any of the DVDs that Lachlan produces. So I'd say it's a fairly important chapter to just plough through and get those concepts in your head. Let's move on to disc 2. We still haven't really talked about the K-Guard yet, but in disc 2 he talks more about the open guard systems that are connected quite nicely with his game plan, his leg lock game plan. Now, one thing I will say is that if you are getting this because you want to learn K-guard as an overall strategy, that's cool. But the main thing I've noticed that whilst Lachlan does go to a good job of discussing the wide gamut of the things that you can do using K-guard, his main emphasis, the main focus and the main objective is to use K-guard to get to backside 50-50 and the heel hook. It's not the only thing you can do from there. He does show a lot of other things you can do far, but the main focus and the detail that he goes to is how to use K-guard in conjunction with the other associated guards, is how to get that heel hook finish, which forms part of the wider strategy of the leg lock game, as you'll see in his other titles. So that's something you have to bear in mind. If you're looking for K-guard as more of a general thing, then I would look to see what I've said about the other titles. Okay, so that being said, Disc 2 focuses on what-if scenarios. What if your opponent is standing? What if your opponent is kneeling? What if your opponent is putting weight on you? That sort of thing. And he also discusses an introduction to the other open guards, which may or may not be related to the things that you can do from K-guard. And again, I think that's more of a link to his other open guard titles on BJJ Fanatics. Let's move on to Disc 3. Disc 3 also goes to more what-if scenarios, especially from the entries. And this is quite a good one because he does go into a lot of concepts about how and when to use the K-guard. So we're now started to talk about the K-guard specifically on its own from Disc 3. Let's have a look. So there's a lot of similarity with the other K-guard instructionals in terms of how to use K-guard, what you're doing with your hands as frames and grips, what you're doing with your top leg, what you're doing with your bottom leg, what you're doing with the underhook, and the basic structure of how to use K-guard. The only difference I would say with the way Lachlan shows his K-guard as opposed to Neil Melanson is that everything that Lachlan does involves dropping your knee, inverting your knee, pointing it to the ground. See what he's doing there, okay? And again, Neil he does show that, but he's less keen to be so ready to drop that knee to the ground. He prefers a higher frame, a framing aspect with both your top and your bottom knees. But mainly because both of their objectives are very different. Neil will go for upper body attacks. Lachlan here, as I said before, his objective is to go for leg locks. So that's Disc 3. More about the structure of how to use K-guard. And on Disc 4, we look at the what-if scenarios if your opponent is sitting heavy, sprawling on you, backing off, doing things obviously to not make your K-guard as accessible and easy as you want it to be. I'm just going to highlight a chapter that I particularly liked, which is not taught by the other instructors, is changing sides. I found this really useful. And you watch how Lachlan does it. When he goes for one leg and it's denied, he immediately switches to the other leg. So he goes from one side to the other. That's a really cool little thing to do because it sort of opens your mind to the idea that you don't have to commit so heavily to the first leg. You can switch straight to the other one, assuming they're not putting weight in you and stuffing your chances. But if you have freedom to move, you can sort of switch from one side to the other very, very quickly. And I've been using that in sparring. I found that very, very useful, small tip there. He does show another version where you kind of invert, which I haven't used because I'm not a big fan of inverting. That is unfortunately one of the drawbacks of the K-guard, the way that Lachlan shows that you do have to have some sort of flexibility and be fairly comfortable with Granby rolling and inverting in general. Although that being said, you don't have to capitalise on the vast majority of the K-guard stuff, but to take the full advantage of what Lachlan is showing you, having an inversion game definitely does help. And if you go back to that video that I talked about where he rolled with the 10th Planet students, you'll see that he inverts quite a lot and he's quite happy to do so. So having that ability definitely helps with playing Lachlan's game, but it's not the deal breaker. You can definitely use a lot of the stuff that he's teaching. So that's Disc 4. Moving on to Disc 5 now. On these a lot of information there. So let's have a look. Yeah. So the whole disc here is dedicated to, half the disc here is dedicated to what to do from the combat base when your opponent uses combat base. Combat base, if you don't know, is when your opponent sticks one knee up and one knee down. And that's a very common scenario, especially in no-gi. I think opponents like to be seen to be more proactive in terms of their stance. Another advantage of the combat base is that they can use their knee to sort of wedge against you. I use this technique a lot when I'm defending someone's open guard and jam against them. And so Lachlan goes through all this possible what-if scenarios of what to deal with there. There's a lot of information here. But again, all this detail adds to your competency of using K-guard and the related other open guards. So very, very important chapter. He also shows something called the Jedi mind trick, which I'll be honest, I tried to learn when I was studying Ryan Hall stuff. But it's beyond me. I can't do it, so I'm not gonna even attempt to describe it or say whether it's good or not here. Finally, in this particular disc, he does cover what happens if your opponent stands. Now, most of the techniques that Lachlan shows are against a kneeling or a combat-based opponent. He says that K-guard is best used against that kind of thing, but he does show what happens against a standing opponent. And for him, the shallow K-guard is a thing. And again, it's very different to the way the other instructors show when the opponent's standing, that he drops his shin and knee all the way down to the lower leg of his opponent. Can you see what he does there? Okay, but he's still obviously able to access the backside 50-50 and other heel hook techniques there. There are a lot of drawbacks. It's looser, they can try and run away. So he talks about the sort of advantages to that, and I'm sure he offers alternative guards that you could use should your opponent stand up. So that's useful. Moving on to disc 6. Now, disc 6 is where things get much more towards the meat of the K-guard. Okay. So before we get to the meat, we have to talk about guard retention. Lachlan's really big on the whole concept of your skill as retaining your guard. Because he's invested so much of these instructionals to teaching open guard, having an open guard retention game is really important, because there's no point having an awesome K-guard if it goes wrong and you don't know what to do from there. So his argument being that you have to know how to transition to other guards in the event of them reacting in certain ways, which they will do. Now, Lachlan talks a lot about upgrading your guard. So let's say you're wearing K-guard and you're thinking this is a great opportunity to attack the back or go for leg locks, but for whatever reason doesn't work and you have to resort to, say, a reverse de la Riva. And not the end of the world, but his argument being reverse de la Riva is not going to get me to the leg locks that I want to get. So you have to upgrade from reverse de la Riva onto another guard, which will lead on to like de la Riva or X guard, which will allow you access to the leg. So he talks a lot about this concept in this particular disc, and it's a very useful one. I think it's worth studying that. Even he talks a little bit about 50-50 here. So this is a disc dedicated to how you would transition from one guard to another, if you were forced to transition to one guard to another, and relates very much to his other titles. Lachlan has a lot of titles dedicated to guard retention. I believe he's got 2 on BJJ Fanatics, so well worth checking those out as well, where he goes into a lot more detail with these what-if scenarios. Now, finally, we are onto the meat of the K-guard, and that's what we all want to learn, the backside 50-50 heel hook, which he did so successfully in the ADCC in 2019. He goes straight into it. First chapter is the offensive pathways. So he talks about how to do the backside, how to get to the backside 50-50, and how to finish the heel hook from there. It's a very, very straightforward tutorial. This is a really, really good chapter. And he shows a little snippet of it there. Now, aside from that very quick introduction, he does go into a lot of detail of how to set it up, where to place the knee, how to trap the knee, how to before that, how to swing the leg over and keep the leg over there, and how to stop or what happens if the opponent backsteps over you. He talks all about that, and in this respect, it's no different from other people who've taught backside 50-50, notably Ryan Hall and his 50-50, most recent 50-50 tutorial. As an aside, I will be doing a separate review of 50-50 guard and directly comparing Lachlan's 50-50 set with Ryan Hall's 50-50 set and anybody else who I think might be relevant in that respect. So look out for that. That's going to be a good one. But here he talks about A lot more what if scenarios of what if the initial attempt to go for the backside 50-50 heel hook doesn't quite go right, and then he talks about the involvement of other guards and how to spin into other positions. This is a useful one. Now Ryan Hall goes into a lot more detail about rotating around the attacking leg. In this one, Lachlan goes around to access the back, which is an interesting sort of obvious, I suppose, obvious direction with which you go. Interestingly, with this entire 8-disc set, there isn't too much discussion of back takes. He does show another, later on I'll show you the attack that he does. And you contrast this with, say, Mikey Musumeci's set, which is a bit different, obviously, it's in the gi, but his whole aim with the K-guard is to get to the back, or at least the matrix position, and then attack from there using berimbolo family of techniques. That's Mikey's set, but Lachlan's set, he's really aiming for the heel hook finish rather than specifically going for the back. And I guess the main problem there with trying to access the back is that you don't have the gi belt or pant to grip on and pull them down into the crab ride. So that's why you have to sort of, it's not as high a priority in that respect, but it's good to learn both. All right, so that's the, speaking of the other attacks, Lachlan does show some other attacks that you can do, but he just summarizes them. I don't know why he doesn't spend more time on this one. I guess because they're just not as high percentage. So for example, he's going to show here the various arm locks that you can get, but they very much rely on your opponent making a mistake, putting their arm there outstretched. So you can see an arm bar there, and the other one, you know, they sort of put their arm there and then you go for an inverted arm bar or a reverse, or a Choi bar it's called. They very much rely on your opponent sort of, you know, making that first move. And this contrasts quite strongly with Neil Melanson's set, where he will target the upper body pretty much as his prime aim. And that the difference there is really what Lachlan does with his knee there. Can you see his knee here? Lachlan is very, whole K-guard setup is dropping that knee to the ground, inverting their knee, which if you look, remember what I said about Neil's set, Neil isn't so keen to quickly drop that knee. He wants to use his leg more of as a clamp and frame up quite high up against the upper body of his opponent, and therefore sort of baiting them into a trap, usually a variation of one of his many triangle attacks, or there's arm bars as well, but he'll also do back takes. Speaking of back takes, Lachlan does show a back take, and it's in what he calls from the lateral close guard. I haven't done this myself, and you'll see why in a minute. Now, from this position, sometimes you have the space to, can you see what he's doing? Thread your leg through, invert, rotate around, and then you're slightly to the side of your opponent. And when you're to the side of the opponent, you have a glimpse of the back, and you can take the back, or in this case, do a pendulum style sweep. And then as you can see, he's coming up and taking the back. And again, in my opinion, I think this relies on a lot of luck, in that your opponent is giving you that space, sort of, you know, taking their body away from you and not trying to crush you. I'm a very little guy, and I get crushed a lot, whatever I try and do. So the opportunities for me to try this have been very, very slim, certainly in sparring. If you'll read my other reviews, I tend not to drill anything I see on DVDs. If I like something, I'll just try it in sparring, and if it works, then I'll try it again next time and improve on it each time. And if it doesn't work, I'll go back and sort of figure out the troubleshoot. That's the way I learn. I don't really have time to drill. Anyway, that's a small aside. So you can see Lachlan is sort of inverting. He threads the leg through. It's kind of like an X shape. He rotates around, spins around, and woe and behold, he's in this sort of sideways close guard, and he gets the potentially a back take and other opportunities. Might be worth at least knowing that it's there, but I think for me personally, the chances of me, certainly in the times I've tried it, have been slim in terms of getting there. But it's nice to know that it exists at least. So I think disc 7 is where you've got your killer finishes there, and that's a really good one to sort of. I bet you're like me. You've gone straight to disc 7 and just wanted to start looking at the backside 50-50 heel hooks and all the other attacks. But you can't really get there without having understood all the other principles and the techniques and the positions and the what-if scenarios that he's shown in the previous 7 discs, which is fair enough. but it's a lot of work, and I don't blame you if you're a bit impatient and want to go straight to the good stuff. Before we wrap up, let's look at disc 8. This is where he sort of mops up and tidies up all the troubleshooting what-if scenarios. And again, very useful. I haven't gone into a lot of detail with this particular chapter just because there's so much content there. I mean, I haven't been able to look in depth, study in depth every single disc. So I've yet to come up and look closely at disc 8 apart from just skimming through the things that I'm interested in. But what I do like is that he does this in all his tapes, or at least most of his instructions, that Lachlan will narrate some rolling footage, which I think is super valuable. And he points out all the things that he's doing. I'm really big in, as you've seen with my other videos, I'm really big into narration as a tool to learn from, as one of the tools to learn from. Because there's one thing learning it in isolation as a static technique taught by an instructor, and it's another thing to try and use it in sparring. So when you see somebody use it in sparring, it does open your eyes to the bigger picture of where to place that technique in the whole gamut of a rolling scenario. Because no two rolls are the same, to be honest. There's so many variables involved, and then to see that in action is a very, very useful tool, I think. So the fact that Lachlan does this is really, really good, and I wish all instructors would do that. The only other person I can think of who does this is Dan Lukart in his, I don't know if you've seen any of his instructionals, he's only got a few out there. But he always shows rolling footage, not necessarily of himself, but his students as well, and how they, and he relates the taught part of the instructional with the rolling action. So that's really, really nice to see, and a nice footnote to the whole disc. So that's Lachlan's K-guard tutorial. You can study it in isolation, but I think it's best utilized with his other open guard discs and his guard retention discs as well. The whole ecosystem that Lachlan teaches you will really give you an absolute killer leg lock no-gi set with which to work on. But don't ignore the other stuff. I think if you're like me, you play a lot more gi than no-gi, then it's really, really useful to refer to say Josh's set and to Mikey's set, just to get a different perspective with what you can do with gi grips as well. But that being said, if you're going to really invest in one of these, how can I deny that Lachlan's K-guard set is an absolute belter. There's just the concepts alone of the whys, the whats, and the what-if scenarios. Really, really super useful. Just be aware that it is no-gi and it's very much geared towards a student who is happy to play the no-gi leg lock game, which, you know, some academies, they don't, I know it's changing a lot, but they don't necessarily practice that a lot, or it's not part of the rule set. They stick to the gi, or they stick to IBJJF rules, and that's something you have to bear in mind. If you are from a club that doesn't really do much of the sub-only rule set, heel hooky stuff, then your best bet is to go for, I would go for Neil's set or Josh's set. Mikey's is probably quite advanced, and I think maybe once you're more comfortable with the open guard and the concept of using open guards, then invest in Mikey's set, and then you're into the whole world of using the matrix and back takes, crab rides, or the bearing bolos, the baby bolos, all that sort of things. But they're all useful. I think if you're like me and really want to deep dive into the K guard, get them all. And not to say that you can see K guard being used in a lot of other instructionals, but they just add them as a single chapter as opposed to a whole disc. What I've done here is to try and show you 4 very different instructors with quite different game plans and how they use the K-guard and interpret it in their own way. And it's up to you, I guess, to cherry pick the best bits that you want to learn from and make it your own. So maybe you're going to be the next guy to do a K-guard instructional with your own interpretation, and I look forward to seeing it then. The next segment I'm going to show you is some rolling footage of me using K-guard best I can. I'm still learning. I only started learning it, probably deep diving into about 2.5-3 months ago, and but I use it every sparring session that I can. and I'm starting to get comfortable with it. Starting to get comfortable with it, at least certain aspects of it. But there's so much more to learn. Anyway, enjoy, and thank you for watching the reviews. Stay on for the rolling footage.